The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, a space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
As Mark writes, we had a flood of emails yesterday asking for our take on the reported death of South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. So let's talk about what his passing could mean for Ukraine aid, for the balance of power in the Senate, and for South Carolina politics more broadly. And that's Mark from South Carolina, of course, as all our listeners know. But for our new listeners, Mark is from South Carolina, or lives there. There are a lot of moving parts here. Well, we're all from New York, so. And
Right.
Listeners clearly want to understand the implications, yes. And I will say, I was not unhappy to see it. I mean, not that I wish anybody to die. I was quite shocked to see it because it was unexpected. But I thought, oh, look at that. And that was about all I thought, except that we would need to talk about it. But I understand that one of the restaurants or one of the buildings or warehouses where Lindsey was over the weekend, 2 buildings that he was in were bombed while he was in them. Is that correct? I was listening to, it's Mario Narwhal. I can't pronounce the man's last name. I'll put the link to what I listened to in the show notes, and the guest is a lieutenant colonel who was saying that in her opinion this was not natural, that the timing was just off, and that where he was over the weekend, Lindsey Graham, and that 2 of the buildings he was in were actually bombed while he was in them. And so there's some suspicions there, at least from the retired lieutenant colonel, and from someone else who I believe is former CIA. So I can put that, the show aired this morning, and I can put that in so our listeners can make up their own minds. So,
Yeah,
Mark?
I'm sure there's going to be all sorts of conspiracy things. Let's face it, Lindsey Graham was a walking poster child for, if you want to have a conspiracy theory, use Lindsey Graham. I mean, he really was. I have to admit, I wanted to see Lindsey lose at the ballot box rather than die. I mean, we do not wish anybody to die. But as I've said about, a lot of people that have passed, regardless of the fact that you've passed away, does not change who and what you were in life. And, there's going to be a lot of tributes out there for Lindsey. I had met him numerous times living here in South Carolina. Matter of fact, Brooklyn?
Did you meet him to talk to him and ask him questions? So did you ever ask him why he changed his mind on Trump? What made him change his mind?
I hadn't seen him since. No, I'm talking about years ago.
I'm
talking about years ago. Lindsey,
really?
Lindsey was not in district very much the past few years. The last time he was here, he basically got booed off the stage because they were upset with him. And I think that, this was, and like I say, I would never, wish death on anyone, but a lot of people here in South Carolina began to see Lindsey for who and what he was, and were not happy. He didn't make MAGA happy when he complained about not taking care of Ukraine. And Ukraine, I will say this, has lost a real ally at this point in time, because he was that one person in the room who actually may have had Trump's attention that could have gotten, support for Ukraine. Lindsey was always hawkish about Iran. And I think that hurt him here, because even the people of South Carolina look at this thing and going on Iran and say, why? What is, nobody can believe they were within 2 weeks of having a nuclear weapon. Excuse me. You have to be a certain kind of stupid to truly believe that. Oh, and to be able to deliver it anywhere in the world with their ballistic. And come on, no, it just was not true. And Lindsey got caught in that. And like I say, the last time that he was here, there's a few things that his constituents. And let's remember, Lindsey Graham, whenever he ran, it was always 54-46, 54-46, 54-46. He didn't win 80-20. He 54-46 because there is he would always lose in Columbia. He would always lose down in Charleston. Where he really did well was up here in the northwest corner of the state, Greenville, Spartanburg area. Greenville being the most populous county in South Carolina, and that's where he would really rack up the numbers, was up here. So just keeping that in mind. My issue with Lindsey was he began to get this nickname down here, the Chameleon. You didn't know exactly what the hell he stood for. In 2016, he called Trump every name in the book. And then after Trump got elected, they were best friends. And then after the illegal insurrection in January, I remember him standing on the Senate floor saying, "Count me out. I've had enough. I can't do this anymore." And then, of course, Biden's term goes. Trump gets reelected. There's Lindsey right up his ass again. That a lot of people in South Carolina, I really think, took notice of. And, there's tributes coming out. We get them here in the local news all the time. Oh, what Lindsey Graham brought to the state. And they've been interviewing people. And one of the people here said, what exactly did he bring to the state? He was far more interested in international stuff than he was in, South Carolina. He didn't, he delivered for the state. Okay, what? I don't know. Beats me. So he was very divisive. And I think that the candidate that's running against him, I think her name is Andrews. She's a pediatrician, very well spoken, very intelligent. I think she had him on the run. I really do. I would have preferred to see him lose in November than, die in July. But the fact is that, this is where we sit. Now, here in South Carolina, Governor McMaster can pick somebody to replace him from either party. Does not have to be a Republican. But let's remember, Governor McMaster cannot run again for governor. He's a lame duck governor at this point. So it's probably going to be the Republican establishment here in South Carolina that's going to be able to decide who's going to fill that in. And then they have to actually have an election at some point in time beforehand.
Sorry, Mark, to interrupt you. I just remembered, because Lindsey won his primary, doesn't the governor have to choose a Republican?
No. No.
Really? I
Nope.
thought, okay. I was
He does
wondering
not.
if that made it
A lot of states, there's a lot of states where the governor is either expected to or is by law required to select a replacement from the same party. South Carolina is not that way. That is not the way it is here in South Carolina. Now, will it be a Republican? Henry McMaster? Yeah, it's going to be a Republican. I mean, this is a no-brainer. Too bad, Scott. He's not calling me up on the phone and saying, "Hey, Mark, go on up and go." Can you kind of keep the seat warm until January? That ain't going to happen. And he won't pick a Democrat. This is going to be because now the Republicans are kind of down here. They've really got to be scrambling a little bit, sort of like they're doing up in Maine, because we're talking is July. So they've got to get a candidate and enough name recognition. And I can't see any of the congressmen or Congress people down here being able to do it. I'm sure Nancy Mason's making a phone call. Pam Evett, maybe. The lieutenant governor who lost the primary to become the governor. Who knows? There's some people with name recognition here, but as to who it's all going to turn out to be, beats the living shit out of me, because it's right now it's a mess, because it's a very closed, enclosed thing. I heard somebody say the other day, yesterday, well, maybe McMaster will step down as governor, and he'll become, and have Evett, who then become the governor because she's the lieutenant governor, have her appoint McMaster. But I could say this right now, Henry, and I've known Henry. Henry loves being the governor. That is the epitome of his entire political career. It was what he wanted when he was the secretary, when he was the attorney general. It is what he has always aspired to be. Is the governor of South Carolina, and I don't think he has any aspirations beyond that. He's going to retire at the end of this, and he's going to go fishing someplace. That's going to be about it for Henry.
Governor bound, senator bound.
Oh, no, 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 no. No, no.
I guess he had a Democratic. You would have to run on the Republican line, but do that. Yeah, imagine that.
So I guess it was an aortic tear that got him.
Oh,
Aortic tear.
That was quick.
We'll miss him. He'll be missed.
Unexpected, and I certainly did not shed any tears, nor was I upset in any way. I was like, "Oh, look! What do you know?"
The only thing about it that, like, if it wasn't an aortic tear, if somebody like slipped something into his tea, and it killed him, that would bother me. They can't do that to our people. We can do that to our people.
You don't think that someone did that and kind of helped him along a little bit?
I mean, it seems possible to me, given where he was coming from and what he was doing while he was there.
Mm-hmm.
That this is one of the MOs of the Russian government when they want to kill somebody. If they can't get them to stand by a window, they slip something in their food or
polonium in the tea.
Right, but I suppose an autopsy would reveal that. Except once again, we're in a place where nothing anybody says is believable.
Exactly. I mean,
you just can't believe it.
It's not like we have our EMT person, and it's not like we're standing in the room watching the autopsy.
Right, and not only that, but let's take a look at this DC medical examiner, Diaz. He said that Officer Sicknick died of natural causes after having bear spray sprayed down his throat on January 6th, after being beaten so badly that he limped back to his headquarters, collapsed, and died a couple of days later.
Yeah.
That's according to Diaz, Dr. Diaz, I should say. That is natural causes. Same thing with Ms. Boylan, the one who sort of hilariously got tread on when she was carrying a sign that says "Don't tread on me." And he said that was, first he said it was due to methamphetamine, and her family said she doesn't take drugs. She's been through a lot of rehab and stuff like that. And then he said, well, it must be Adderall that killed her, not being stomped on by hundreds of people. So this guy, this medical examiner in D.C. is not, in my mind, a credible source of any information. Yeah, Nancy Mace would probably call the White House and say, hey, could you put in a good word for me? I imagine she would be one person. I guess there are other people who didn't get through the primary process for governor who would now be eligible to run for Lindsey's seat.
Scott, the thing you got to remember, though, is if Nancy Mace was to do that, she has to give up her congressional seat.
Isn't she out already? I thought she had given that up. Am I wrong about that?
Oh, maybe.
I may be mistaken. I thought she was out of work, but either way, I mean, it's certainly worth the gamble. There's not going to be a Democratic senator from South Carolina, right? So whoever gets Lindsey Graham's seat is going to be the front runner for a primary process the next time the seat becomes eligible. But it's not going to be a Democrat.
Well, no, I mean, it's going to be a placeholder. Now, whether it's going to be the permanent placeholder that the Republicans down here, rally around, I don't know. Because, a lot of the establishment, that's the one thing about South Carolina. The political establishment down here is very connected. They all have political jobs that they would have to give up to be able to do this. in some form or another. So it's going to be a tough call. The Republican Party down here really does have to make some decisions, and I'm sure that Henry's sitting down there at the governor's mansion just saying, "Hey, somebody make me a call and tell me what to do," because again, to him it doesn't matter. He's reached the epitome of his political desires, but he's going to do whatever the Republicans tell him. I don't think anybody outside of South Carolina, like you mentioned, Trump or anything like that, I don't know how much involvement that would be welcome down here. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I don't know. All right, so let me start with this. Occam's razor pretty much says that he died of an aortic, whatever it was, rupture, whatever it was.
Yep.
Probably terrible way to die. So sad. Rumors will persist. Obviously, he came back here from Ukraine with the goal of putting more sanctions on Russia, of having Ukraine win this war and chasing Putin back to Russia. And Putin probably wouldn't feel real good about that. So any rumors to the idea that he was assassinated somehow, certainly plausible given who Putin is and what his MO is about murdering people. Not unlikely, but chances are that Lindsey Graham died of an aortic rupture or whatever it is, and that's the truth. His legacy, to me, Lindsey Graham is a remora. Like if I had to pick one animal in the world to say, what kind of animal would Lindsey Graham be? It would be a remora. A remora is a fish, relatively small fish, with a sucker on top of its head that attaches itself to larger fish. I've seen them on sea turtles.
Sharks, mostly.
I've seen them on sharks. And you see him, Lindsey Graham sucked onto John McCain, became the sort of the third wheel in the John McCain, what's his name, Joe Lieberman duo, and they became the three amigos together. Lindsey Graham then, after Trump gave out his cell phone number and proved himself to be, the candidate of choice for the Republican Party for president, Lindsey Graham turned around, left John McCain, who was still alive at the time, and became a remora attached to Donald Trump. I guess there's some stuff in his bio. I didn't realize any of this stuff about his parents dying when he was very young, taking care of his younger sister, always looking for a father figure to glom onto. I guess that was John McCain. I guess that was Donald Trump. Imagine. And so his character, I would say, his legacy and his character kind of twin together in that he will always be remembered, to the extent that he will be remembered, which I don't think would be much, as a remora sucking onto the body of a larger predator, a larger animal, a larger beast, however you want to put it. And no legislative accomplishments that we can see. A lot of petulant yelling in the well. Remember when they went after Brett Kavanaugh, him being really like sort of shrill and indignant about the worst thing he's ever seen. My memory, I don't go back as far with Lindsey Graham as Mark does, but my memory of him is from the Clinton impeachment, where he was one of the managers along with John Kasich, who became the governor of Ohio and now has a show on Sirius Radio on Saturdays, I think it is, or Sundays. And Morning Joe, whatever his name is, long-winded, boring Joe Scarborough, the long-winded, boring sycophant, was another one of the Clinton impeachers. And they followed Newt Gingrich down that blind alley. Newt Gingrich ended up losing his seat. Remember all the stuff that went on. That's kind of my memory, and it wasn't a good one. Like when I think of Lindsey Graham, I think like the first thing I think of is, man, that is not my kind of guy.
No.
He ain't no dude. He was an openly gay man who just didn't talk about it a lot in public, but it was a well-known thing in Washington, D.C. that he had male escorts with him frequently. Somebody called 911 on Saturday night, right? He wasn't alone. He wasn't married. He didn't have any kids. He wasn't alone. So whoever that was, might have been one of his boys. But Lindsey Graham is my least favorite kind of gay man, in that he was against LGBTQ issues, and he discriminated against other gay people. He's I guess you would call him a self-hating gay man. And so I guess last but not least, he probably advocated for more wars than anybody decided John Bolton. And he wanted to send other people's children off to war. I believe he advocated for nuking Gaza. Just nuke it, just blow it to pieces and be done with it. He was a very, very, and I don't know if this is by way of compensation or not, but he was a very violent man for somebody as gentle as he appeared to be. And really never saw a war he didn't want to get America involved in. And his I believe a large part of his legacy, such as it is, because I don't believe he's going to be remembered as a consequential figure at all, but his legacy is of a person who would get into public debates, go on TV a lot, and advocate for going to war. He wanted to go to war with Iraq in 2003. He was one of those. He wants to go to war with Iran. He wants to go to war everywhere. Wants to fight wars all the time. And for the quotes that can be attributed to him are mostly about his sort of truculent, crazy stuff that he has said over the years about being an American, right? For example, I don't know whether this was in context of Donald Trump, but he said it's very American to avoid paying your taxes. He would say free speech is great, but we're in a war, so we can't have free speech. He turned on John McCain, and he said, I don't like what Trump says about John McCain, but we play golf together. It's a lot of fun. He is just a quote machine for advocating the wrong things, for being on the wrong side, and that's the way I think I'll remember him.
Yeah, Lindsey, as I say, I met him a few times. Extremely charming. Very, very charming. He is the epitome of old Southern politics. Very charming to the face, likable, believe it or not, very likable. Not a dude. that definitely not a dude, but close in those in a personal interaction, more of a dude than you'd think he would be. But you never knew what he was going to do once he walked out the room. Once he got into the smoke, filled back rooms, he was going to do what was best for his political career, and that's Southern politics. That's just kind of the way it's worked all the time, and it's politics in many places. And so he was a consummate politician. I like the remora eel analogy. It's true. It is extremely true. He would hook himself onto. I remember the interview that he had with. It was somebody who was in a car, and he was talking about Joe Biden, and he was basically crying about how there was no better man on the face of the earth than Joe Biden. But then when Joe Biden became president, boop, that all went out the window. I mean, it all depended on which way the wind was blowing as far as Lindsey was concerned. And you're right. He did not meet a war. He didn't like. He was all for it. He does have basically coming from nowhere. I mean, pretty much everybody here knows his parents died. He brought up his sister, and was able to enter the military. I think his first degree was in psychology, and then he got a degree. Then he went and got his JD. He was very successful as successful as you can be, by all accounts, as a judge advocate with the Air Force. So, he rose to the rank of colonel. So he, from a kid from Center, South Carolina, with two dead parents and a sister to take care of, I give him credit for that. I don't care if he was gay or not. I mean, I really don't. And of course, that was always a rumor here. But when it was a rumor back, he was representative for the 2nd Congressional District of South Carolina, and we up here are in the 4th. So it's it's close, and there's a lot of people that I would say didn't overtly like him that much, but he was, at least you knew what you're getting. He was the devil you knew, and that was perfectly fine. But he was consistent. He was consistent in his vote getting. Like I said, it was 54-46, 54-46, 54-46. It didn't matter. And it might go by a point or two, but not by much. And, it's, again, I would have liked to have seen him run this campaign. I would have liked to have seen what happened in November against what I see as a very strong Democratic candidate against him. Is it possible that we could have a Democratic candidate from South Carolina? Yeah, I think it may be. And this may be the thing, because as we were talking in a previous podcast about, Maine, about how that Democrat getting out may have taken Maine right off the table. Who knows? I don't think this takes South Carolina off the Republican table, but I think it makes it a little bit more difficult. Let's see in the next week who Henry is going to say is going to be the person replacing, because I think that's going to be an interesting development there. And I don't think Trump is going to be that influential in this, because let's remember, in the governor's race in the primary, Trump first supported Pamela Abbott, our lieutenant governor. Oh, she's the greatest. And then he kind of slipped in. He also supported our Attorney General, Alan Wilson. So he was supporting two at the same time. And so I don't know how much now. Alan Wilson is probably going to be the next governor, I would think. But we'll see there. Lindsey, again, I'm sorry. My condolences to his family and to his friends, because he was. I don't know if is going to be as inconsequential as Scott thinks he is. I think he's going to be a cautionary tale. If he's got any consequence, I think it's going to be a cautionary tale about sometimes just hitching your bandwagon doesn't always work, because we began to see the cracks in it down here in South Carolina. That, people were sitting there just going, everybody says you deliver for South Carolina. What exactly have you delivered for? There was a thing come out, USC Upstate. Oh, he was always in support of higher education up here in the Upstate. I don't have any bloody ass clue what they're talking about. So we'll have to see. Anyway, Lindsey, you had a good
funny
run,
man.
Yep. Okay.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio. your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Journal of Interdisciplinary Conflict Sciences, the JICS. This open access journal, double peer-reviewed, provides a platform for emerging scholars to publish their work and engage in meaningful dialogue across disciplines. The JICS is currently accepting article submissions on an ongoing basis and is published through the NovaWorks Scholarly Repository at Nova Southeastern University. You'll find a link to the journal in our episode description.